we can uh, we can manage. So for today's meeting, similarly to yesterday, you can speak and listen to French, German, English, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, Polish, and Romanian. I will not repeat the instructions of yesterday. I think the logistics about which room to be in, etc. I think it was clear from yesterday. So I propose we go straight into discussing the outcome of the workshops and the summary of the conclusions, because it was three very interesting workshops, and maybe we need some time also to discuss here all together any questions you might have. So I pass the floor to Antonis for the first workshop on the assessment of the governance systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katja. Welcome back. For the first workshop on the assessment of the governance system, we have prepared this very short presentation on the basis of the example that we have already communicated to you in Appendix 6.1. And we try to provide some guidance on how to evaluate the results of your testing. Either the samples are selected based on the basic unit requirements, either the samples are selected on the basis of the interventions, on how to evaluate and grade, and provide a grading of the governance systems at intervention level. We had a very fruitful discussion. The first thing that we discussed is some considerations on cases where, by selecting on the basis of the BURS, we need some additional items for a specific basic unit requirement, how we should treat the errors found on another basic unit requirement. Normally for the grading, those should not count, at least as projected, or only as a nominal amount. We discussed how to calculate also the occurrence of the occurrence rate, how to calculate the occurrence rate, again on the basis of the methodology used for the sample selection. For the errors found outside of the objective of the testing, we received some questions on how to assess them, and the reply is that there's no one-size-fits-all. We need to see also these errors, to their nature, if there's a systemic nature for them, and also whether, not only for this error, but also for any kind of deficiencies found, if remedial actions are taken. So our reply is that yes, always remedial actions taken by the member states, by the paying agencies, should be taken into consideration. However, for the financial year that is within the scope of the audit, the protection of the financial interest plays the most significant role in order to grade the systems at intervention level. We have also received some questions as regards conditionality, which yesterday we communicate that is not anymore a horizontal requirement, and whether it should be tested annually or not. And Our reply is that it is the certification body's decision how to approach the test, whether they will decide to test it. We assume that it is tested as a new element. It is tested for the first year. Whether it will be tested next year, claim year 2024, or it will be tested annually, or it will be rotated, is on the basis of the certification body's decision, based on the results of the risk assessment and the evaluation of the results of the previous year testing. Staying on the Ajax populations, we received several questions about the grading and of the on-the-spot control basic unit requirement, and whether a control can, the certification body can accompany the on-the-spot controls carried out by the paying agency. Well, we discussed it, and we believe that a decision whether to accompany or not should be based on, as a general rule, on the purpose of the on-the-spot control. So if an on-the-spot control is carried out in order to determine the payment, it is preferable to avoid accompanying the control. However, if the control is for the purposes, for quality purposes, for the QA, then we don't see any serious problem, since even whether it's the paying agency or the certification body who finds an error that the system did not detect, this would be part of the evaluation of the grading, either as CB findings, either as residual risk on the basis of the QA results. Now, going back to the non-Ajax interventions, both of our examples were based on the non-Ajax interventions. We discussed about rotation on specific basic unit requirements versus rotation on interventions. Our conclusion was that even with a pure approach, rotation can be applied for a specific intervention, but regardless if we rotate or not, there should be an evaluation for this intervention, either based on the results of the testing of the pures of similar interventions, either on the basis of previous year results. Here we believe that the previous year results could be used preferably mostly for the review of the control procedures rather than the actual compliance testing. We covered the issue of the residual risk, which is a new element on the evaluation of the governance system, and we mentioned that this has been communicated several times to the member states. They know that the overall evaluation of the governance system would include the residual risk. However, we received concerns from many member states whether the data in order to calculate the residual risk could be available, and whether those data, if available, will be on time. For this issue, we cannot provide an answer. This needs a great communication between you and the paying agency. However, we believe that the paying agency should keep such kind of data, in the sense that they need to know whether the system in place is effective or not, and the way to assess it is to have data to assess. And secondly, it was mentioned by met by my colleague, that the paying agency has the responsibility to submit a management declaration as regards the proper functioning of the governance system, and the basis for this declaration should be um, the availability of such data, and actually a timely availability of such kind of data. Otherwise, the management declaration will not be on time. We received also some concerns about interventions that are traditionally, there is a belief that they are traditionally prompt, let's say, more, that the errors can be found more frequently, even by the paying agency. And what would be the consequences if intervention reveals high error rates, etc. We try to explain that this is a working group, a workshop for the certification bodies, and our job here is to provide an opinion whether the system functions properly or not. So if there are interventions with higher rates, this practically means that the system in place is not functioning properly and needs some readjustments. Now, what are the consequences? I don't know, and this is outside of our discussion, let's say, in the sense that even if a conformity inquiry is open, there is always a lot of time, approximately 18 to 24 months period, to exchange the member states and the DG Agri to exchange opinions and see, to assess precisely the risk and to have a fair, let's say, decision. Austria raised a very good point that as regards the grading at intervention level, we take into consideration both the PA residual risk and the CB findings, while when assessing and grading the BURS in the matrix of guideline 3, only the CB findings are taken into consideration. And this is something that we need to come back to you, because that's a very good example. There is a confusion whether the audit opinion, how should be the audit opinion, for example, if the paying agency performs a perfect quality assessment for Ajax, but the errors are extremely high. So in this case, does the system function or not? So for this, we will come back to you. And the last point that I would also like to mention is that we have, for both Ajax and non-Ajax populations, some discussion about the level of the sample, how much it should be, etc. We did not enter in details to this discussion, in the sense that the sample size, the work volume, is based on the risk assessment and your professional judgment. From our side, what we try to do is to rationalize the work for all the other audit objectives, and you have seen that in guideline 2 for financial year 2024, in order to focus on audit objective 2, so to allocate your resources in this direction. And it is up to the certification bodies to decide the volume of the work. Several parameters should play a role there. How much is the PA sample? What are the errors found by the paying agency? for those interventions or for those procedures or basic union requirements. So there's no clear answer for each case. You already have Annex 1 there, which provides the necessary guidance. However, but the ultimate decision is on your hands, and based on your decision, it's up to us to assess how much reliance we can place on this work, on this strategy or not. And before closing, I just wanted to remind you, we have done it several times since yesterday, that the intervention grading is requested already from financial year 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonios. Any questions or comments or interventions? Or maybe things that were not covered in the, as Austria is smiling. Would you like to comment, maybe?
It was a valid question, and I think it will be answered in time. So I have hope, and I know they are competent people, and so it's not.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there is nothing else on these conclusions, then I propose we proceed to the conclusions from the second workshop on land at disposal. And I pass the floor to my colleagues, David Turki, and well, with Okay, we have a small technical issue. So in order not to lose time, we will do the conclusions of workshop 3 on the submission and reconciliation of the annual performance report. So Vincent will present this one.
Thank you, Chair. So we had this workshop 3 on the submission and reconciliation of the annual performance report. The basis for the discussion were presentation from Unit C1 and H3. C1 gave a presentation on the submission and assessment of the annual performance report, the lessons from the first year. C1 also presented the updated annual performance report module in SFC, just to illustrate how the development would be done for the next exercise. And we had this presentation by H3, this first presentation on reconciliation. During the presentation of Unit C1, we had a detailed overview of the submission steps based on what was done in financial year 22 or for financial year 23. We had also a state of play of the assessment of the annual performance report, also for financial year 23, with an emphasis on the reporting of the amounts recovered, which were discussed. We had afterwards, a presentation of the update in the submission of the annual performance report for financial year 24. So with development and point concerning the co-financing rate for the FRD measures, the systems improvements, the validation rules in place the validation rule which will be in place. We had a question from Portugal, Spain, Belgium, Austria, France, and I forgot to put Netherlands as well. We had several points on the co-financing, aggregated value, which are used in the annual performance report, the error messages, as well as question on methodological aspects, which were further developed by Spain following a learning network and an examination of the processes. Regarding the next steps, so C1 indicated that there will be an expert group on the 28th of June, where there will be a full presentation of the revised technical guideline for the submission of the annual performance report, and specific workshops which will be announced and which should be held around September 2024. C1 also indicated that the testing environment with the updated annual performance report module will be available from July 2024. Following the presentation of H3 on reconciliation, we had a discussion, and in fact, following this meeting, there is an important emphasis that we inserted in this conclusion presentation. So there is 3 separate procedures which are considered under the new delivery model. So there is one which is a financial clearance, one on the performance clearance, and one on performance review. The emphasis which was done in the workshops that, as regards the work done, we are dealing with performance clearance when we work on the analysis of the by H3 of the reconciliation. So the Commission examines the justification of any excess deviation or absence of corresponding output. That's the exercise which is done, and for which we have, normally there should be justification in that. So there will be further development by Unit H3 on this specific exercise for examining the justification. It will be done in the afternoon session, so where we would like to come again on the question of Spain regarding the justification. And on performance review, we also discussed that, as it is a point of interest for the member states, there will be a first draft of the guidance regarding the performance review, an exercise which will be done this year, which will be submitted on the 11th of July expert group. So that was for the performance review. Regarding the certification body, we had a proposal from Sweden, so which indicated that it would help the certification body in their assessment of the work done on annual performance report to have a compilation of best practices by the CB, presented in fact to the other CBs. So it could include technical guidelines, most effective methods shared or in expert group or in learning network. I think we have already some part this afternoon on this as well. And that would be it for a short summary of the workshop 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Any interventions, questions? Okay, we're going to have also another session on this later on this afternoon. Yes, France, of course.
Oui, merci. Désolé.
Yes, thank you. Not the easiest setup, but never mind. So thank you very much for the feedback on the discussions in the workshop. I just wanted to underline one thing that we talked about. It was really for those who weren't in the workshop this morning. And I think we'll be talking about this in greater detail this afternoon in the plenary. We had quite a lot of debate about the kind of justification that has to be provided if there is any divergence from implementation. So you highlighted this on the slide, and I wanted to underline this for our colleagues. We all know that we need to substantiate when there are gaps, when there are differences, when the flat rates implemented are more than 50% of those envisaged and forecast, because there's a risk, of course, that payments might be cut as a consequence. That's Article 42 of the Basic Regulation, I believe. But what emerged in the debate very clearly was that we also need to justify those differences for the flat rates from the very first euro that exceeds the threshold envisaged. And the explanation was that there are legal provisions on this, just stating that all of the expenditure must be covered and just substantiated. So this 50%, planning agency might wonder what the 50% is there for anyway, because actually, as a matter of fact, at present and indeed in future as well, we need to provide justifications right from the very first euro that we exceed the threshold. So that was a very important point, I think, in the workshop this morning. So I wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments? Okay, so I propose then we proceed to the conclusions of workshop 2. I hope the technical issue is now resolved. Yes, obviously. The workshop 2 was on land and disposal. So Davide.
Thank you. Sorry for the technical problems. So to wrap up and briefly summarize the outcome of this workshop. First of all, I would like to mention that we had a very valuable participation from the member states, especially from Denmark and Italy, who had very interesting presentation. And the panel was composed by myself, but together with João Veloso from Agri H3, so in charge of audit of the governance system, especially for area heads, and colleagues from the policy unit B1, Economic Sustainability, Carlo Pagliacci and Jessica Tristano, who had introductory presentation about the topic. So since it's a technical topic which is not really covered by our unit, I ask my colleagues to interrupt me should I say something not fully correct. And then, of course, afterwards you will have the opportunity to ask some questions and my colleague will provide answers. So I'm quoting from the presentation provided by our colleague from Unit B1. Why is it so important, land at disposal? Having the land at the farmer's disposal is so important, first of all, because it's a legal requirement for receiving direct payments. And colleagues from B1, they presented which are the applicable legal references, quoting the applicable regulation. And it is important, of course, to prevent irregularities and to protect the union financial interests. Very important, they presented this document, Commission Guidance, issued the 26th of July 2021, which, by the way, will be made available in Circa BC together with the presentation of this aspect group meeting. So, once again, to summarize about the legal requirements, having the land at disposal is a legal requirement for the reception of the direct payments. Once again, area declares have to be at the farmer disposal in a lawful way and asserted on a legal basis in accordance with applicable national law. But what is very important is that member states possess an important margin of discretion to require appropriate proof to demonstrate actual and lawful use. But any type of valid legal title should be accepted. So since there is such an high discretionality from member states, especially on how to set up the controls, we thought that it was very useful to have concrete examples from member states. So that's why we thank again, especially Denmark and Italy, who had extensive presentation, but then also the other member states who actually participated and provided some good practices. So the member states have the right to presume that the land is at disposal of the farmer. However, this presumption is balanced by the obligation to carry out systematic administrative controls. As I was saying, the discussion really focused on these controls, which are set up on a different way in each member states. And the control mechanism must be effective, and what is also foreseen in the legal framework is not to be limited to the obvious cases of double claims. So, as I already said, I will not go through the presentation that we had from Denmark and Italy, and a lot of very useful examples were provided, and once again you will receive this presentation in Circa BC. And we had intervention from many of the representatives which were in the room. And that's it. I mean, I will not go through too much details. And however, I encourage you to ask to intervene should you have any kind of questions, and my colleague will be able to answer your questions.
So it's like in the weddings. If you have anything to say, you have to say it now. Any comments, any questions now that we have the experts with us? Okay, but then it seems that everything was crystal clear. That's good to know. Then I propose, if there's no questions on any of the workshops of this morning, I propose that we break for lunch. So please be back at 2 o'clock. We continue in this room. And we have some more presentations relating on the areas of interest of the new delivery model in the afternoon. Thank you. Bon appétit.